The social universe, where you learn the secrets of the social media through the social universe, and in many cases, you learn the secrets of the universe itself. And today we're going to be learning a few different secrets about the universe, and one is just the universal principle of marketing. Social media is something that, strange enough, isn't new. It just became electronicized and put into the cloud. And so social media is a great thing, and it didn't go away. We actually have Joan Walker here, who is the executive director of the Arizona Bioindustry Association, and she has a few facts that she and I might tag team and share a little bit about, and then talk about why social media is important not only in this industry but for everyone as well. So one of the things that I wasn't aware of that Joan shared with me is that in the area of bioscience, jobs are up 45% from 2000 to 2011 here in Arizona, which is pretty impressive. And now these stats are a couple years out of date, correct? So they're actually even more, because Arizona's economy has grown even more in the last couple of years. Arizona's economy, my understanding is within the top 5 in the United States, but we only, I think, had as a state a 1.5% net growth. So that doesn't say a lot, but at least we're not on the negative, and that's something that's very helpful. But considering that in the bioscience sector, which is debatably 25 to 50% of the Arizona economy, then that means some of the other areas have fallen a little bit.
Well, when we look at the life science sector, so the healthcare sector, the everything that's governed by Health and Human Services, the Affordable Care Act, and things of that nature, that is 25% of the country's gross domestic product, and it's 25% of the federal budget. So we're talking big numbers, and there are numbers that affect every single one of us. But let's talk about social media, because how something affects me goes back to how I tell the story, right? So before the break, we talked about that could you live without a human heart? And most of us would say, well, no, of course not. But the reality is that there is a company in Arizona, it's officially a small business, that makes the Syncardia total artificial heart.
Wow.
And it's based on what was called the Jarvik 7. Now, Kurt, you and I are old enough to remember when the Jarvik total artificial heart came out many, many years ago. The problem is that you hooked it up to a big machine that was almost the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, which meant that you couldn't go very far and you didn't have much of a life. But today, with the Syncardia total artificial heart, they can take a device that's about this big, about the size of my two fists together, implant it into you, and then hook it up to a pump that fits in a backpack.
Wow.
Not a Beetle.
It's amazing.
And it bridges people to transplant. And what that means is if you got sick and your heart wasn't going to work anymore and you needed a transplant and you were on the transplant list, okay, you had to wait for a match, and maybe you got it and maybe you didn't. Now people can get the total artificial heart. They get stronger, and when a real heart is available for them, they're in much better condition to actually receive that heart and have a real transplant. So it's an amazing technology that comes here in Arizona. I use that company as an example because they are absolutely awesome when it comes to using social media and the web to tell their story.
It is a great story. But
your listeners, they can go to Syncardia, that's SYNCARDIA.com. And on Syncardia.com, there's a bunch of videos where you can actually see people that have no heart.
Wow.
Boxing and riding bicycles and taking their kids for their walk.
For real.
And for real. And in the kitchen. So they've learned how to tell their story, that it's okay to be heartless.
You bet.
So that's a really good example. And as a small business owner, I have to think about what is it about my story that would get somebody to say, tell me that again? You can do what? Okay. So think about, for your listeners, what is it about their business that somebody would say, tell me that again?
I agree. And do think about that. And there's several ways to tell stories. One is through your Facebook. Another one, maybe a little bit more professional content on LinkedIn. But YouTube is the largest search engine in the world right now, over Google. Google doesn't mind because they own YouTube, and they've helped optimize it and create it as a mechanism that you can search and find exactly what you're looking for when you want to find it, and so it's a great tool. So this is a great place to be able to tell your story.
Absolutely.
YouTube.
And it used to be that if you had a video out there and that video was not just right, okay, it hurt your business more than it helped it.
Sure.
But today with YouTube, that's not necessarily the truth anymore.
That's correct.
And so as long as what you're sharing is interesting, a homemade video or even a video that you took with your phone can get a lot of hits. The story is important.
You bet. And the story can be either factually engaging, it can be dramatic, or it could be funny. And depending on what kind of an audience you're trying to draw, especially the youthful members of our society love to get together instead of going out to movies on a Friday or Saturday night, or on a weekend of any kind. They get together and watch YouTube little clips, and who can top the other person for the funniest video. So keep in mind, if you can create some things that might appeal to an audience that loves humor, you never know what might go viral.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is, because we are talking about business, is the biggest question I get from people is, how do I get a return on investment from social media?
Good call.
And
probably the most powerful driving question that anybody asks out there. Yes.
And the reality is whether you're using any social medium, okay, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, websites, YouTube, Vimeo, or many, many others like Google Plus and Instagram and lots of things that are out there now with options, is you got to figure out, where do my customers hang out?
Absolutely.
If I'm a kid and I'm selling things to a kid market, I'm a kid company, then I'm not going to hang out on LinkedIn.
Correct.
Okay. If I am a professional services company, I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of value from Facebook. So as you start thinking about where your customers hang out, you have to think about how you can leverage the amount of resource you want to invest, and resources, time and money, and then look at, okay, if I have this much time and money, what's my return on investment? One of the ways when we first started getting into social media, and between myself, my company, and some of the other things I'm involved with, we have a number of Twitter IDs, and those Twitter IDs generate, our user community is about 175,000 people now.
And I'm going to have you pause right there. If anybody out there has a pen and a piece of paper, start taking some notes, because the second most common question, besides how do I get ROI out of my social media, is Twitter really all it's cracked up to be? What's the best use of Twitter? So make sure you pay close attention, because we have an avid fan of Twitter amongst us here today. And so tell us how you get great value from your Twitter.
Well, I think, with Twitter, a lot of it has to do with who you're talking to. Again, it all goes back to audience. So if you have a loyal following on Twitter, people who read what you read or what you share, and then will share it again, there's value to that. Okay. The other thing is, if you build a community of shared values. So for instance, you see hashtags like cancer or innovation or small business, or, God help us, I love Justin Bieber. But whatever that is, that's a tag for a community. And if you're speaking to that community, then that's a way to get connected with them. Now, can you get an ROI on it? I got into Twitter early.
Mm-hmm.
It was much easier to build a big following in the early days of Twitter than it is today.
That's true.
There are a lot more rules.
Mm-hmm.
And when everybody else was either saying what they were having for lunch or what movie they watched last night
Mm-hmm.
or tweeting about world crises like the Iran crisis,
Mhm.
which put Twitter on the map.
Right.
I was blogging and tying my blogs to my Twitter accounts.
Absolutely.
So I have multiple Twitter IDs, and each one is to a different audience. So AZ Bio CEO talks to the bio community.
Great
Okay.
idea.
JKW Innovation talks to the innovation community.
Mhm.
Core Purpose, the company that I own, is one that speaks to the larger businesses. And JKW Leadership talks to a very, very focused community that is interested in being a better leader. And then I'm going to have my own eclectic space, just talk about whatever I want to talk about, and that's Joan KW. So if you look at those different IDs, you'll see different kinds of information on those Twitter profiles because I'm speaking with, sharing with different communities made up of different people. Now there's some overlap, about 30% between those different profiles, but that's because those people share those interests. And as we continue to grow, it helps. Now, does it make a difference? Because that's what it comes down to. Otherwise, if you're good at it and you like it, you might be even better at it than some people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But if nobody will pay you for it, it's a hobby.
Sure.
So from that perspective, we really did a lot of research at my company on what was the payment and what was the payback. And what we found is when we were actively utilizing social media, and that's all media, that's utilizing LinkedIn, utilizing the web, utilizing YouTube in a concerted and coordinated strategic plan
Mm-hmm.
with Twitter.
Correct.
Okay. We saw that we had a return on investment which was almost 10 times what our return on investment was, time and money combined, when we used traditional advertising.
Really? Was Google wrapped up in that, or was Google a separate?
Google, I think what we have to remember, and we don't do Google ads. We don't advertise on Google.
Okay.
So Google is a search engine, just as Safari is a search engine, or all of the new ones that are coming out. And hopefully I'm not leaving off anybody's favorite. But
Sure.
the reality is that the search engine's job is to help you find what you're looking for. Okay. In the old days, it was the card catalog at the library.
Right.
Okay. Now it's the search engine,
Mhm.
and so a good search engine is going to help you find what you're looking for as quickly as possible. And the struggle that they have is how do they balance the hits of all of the different sectors with the fact that the same story is going to come up 20, 30 times, and it
Right.
does.
Very good point. In fact, when we come back from break, we're going to talk about kind of the unification theory. We've talked about a couple of different wedges of advertising and how we've mentioned that they should come all under one roof. But when we come back from break, we're going to talk about how the best way is to put them all together. If you listen to my Ageless Living show, which talks about holistic medicine versus our modern medicine practices, Western medicine, and then I come up with a phrase that I didn't coin, but I'm a big proponent of, which is integrative medicine. That the same thing is in marketing. You need to have integrative marketing. Everything needs to be integrated together. Somebody blew all the different parts and pieces of marketing apart into all these different amazing angles, but they don't always lead to one place, and you have to create that unification theory to bring them back together. So when we come back from break, we're going to talk about that exact marketing unification theory. Thanks for tuning in here on The Social Universe. This is Kurt Wilhelm, the host of The Social Universe here on World Talk Radio and Voice America, and we are joined by Joan Gerber-Walker, the Executive Director of the Arizona Bioindustry Association, and we'll be right back after the break.